As with every Thomas the Tank Engine movie, Journey Beyond SODOR has had its share of merchandise. Today, I will be taking a look at the adventures counterparts of 4 of the new characters from the film. The characters in question being Theo, Merlin, Hurricane, and Frankie. I was generally impressed with these 4 engines, but they aren't without fault. I'd say the first big problem with them all for me was their seemingly exclusive. I was unable to find Theo and Hurricane in any of the stores I live near, and I only ended up buying them while I was on holiday in Australia. However, Merlin and Frankie I was able to find at my local bookstore. Why only half of the new characters are in stores where I live is a mystery to me, but I suppose is not really an issue with the products themselves, but their distribution. I mean, the distribution of new products to New Zealand has just always been abysmal. Anyway, on to the engines themselves. First up is Theo. Theo is an experimental railway traction engine. He appears to have the same design as another railway traction engine in the series, Fergus, but with added cogs and a cab. The Theo model itself is slightly odd. The first flaw I notice is that the coupling hook that is present on the front end of every other locomotive in the Adventures range is missing. This is particularly jarring, as there is a scene in the movie where Theo pulls Tomas backwards. This scene would not be able to be recreated with the toys, and that is something of a disappointment. The gears on the side of the model are a neat feature and move as it is pushed along, which I'm sure most children will find amusing. However, to accomplish this feature, the rear wheels are considerably thicker and jut out further than the front ones. From the front, he almost looks like George the Steamroller. What I do like about this particular model is that it is fairly small and a decent size compared to engines such as Tomas. He also has a nice paint job. He is, however, rather lightweight. The next engine is Merlin. This is a step up from Theo, as he has plenty of weight and a coupling on both ends. However, he has some critical flaws. The largest one being that his chassis is too low for the tracks he's supposed to run on, and just scrapes along the centre of the rails. While I don't have any adventures track, I do have Take and Play. It doesn't work on these either, unless you find the energy to file down the bottom of the engine yourself. This issue is bizarre to me. Why an engine shouldn't work properly with the tracks it's designed to work on is baffling. Unfortunately, like most tender engines in the Adventures range, Merlin's proportions are rather squashed, and he is fairly out of scale when compared to engines like Tomas. Sadly, this is how most tender engines are portrayed in this range. He also lacks smaller wheels at the front, like the older Take and Plays used to have, and has them poorly moulded into the chassis instead. This is a shame. Adventures Merlin has a decent paint job, but compared to the Trackmaster Merlin, it's a tad pathetic. Look how reflective this is! It almost makes up for the terrible design and proportions. I will say that somehow the Adventures toys managed to capture the characters' faces better than the larger Trackmasters. Next is Hurricane. He has a lot of flaws. A big one is that in the movie he has 10 driving wheels, yet here on the Adventures toy he only has 6. It's pretty clear looking at this model that there is room to add at least one other pair of wheels to give him at least 8, but no. His buffer beams also aren't painted on either end of him, which is disappointing, as in the movie they are very distinctively red. Here he just looks very dark and not very interesting without his red flare. He is also rather underscale, especially compared to Frankie, who is very clearly a lot bigger than in the movie. With the Adventures counterparts, Frankie is considerably taller than Hurricane, and I feel this sort of ruins their dynamic. But there are some good things about this item. His face, for one, is a perfect representation of the character we see in Journey Beyond SODOR. And as far as Adventures engines go, his proportions are acceptable. One thing I think would be a good idea to do is to release some Adventures ladle trucks, some rolling stock that are very prominent in the movie. Trackmaster Hurricane comes with 2, and I think some smaller ones for Adventures Hurricane would look very nice. Perhaps release 2 of them in a 4-pack with Hurricane and Frankie? I don't know. And the final engine is Frankie. This Frankie model reminds me of older Take and Play. She has decent weight and is rather tall like the older style diesels they used to make. If she were to be produced in 2013, the best time for Take and Play, I feel she wouldn't look too different compared to this. Compared to her CGI counterpart, she could be longer, as she is based off a rather long diesel shunter in the movie. The most disappointing aspect of her Adventures toy is the total lack of detail on the rear. Windows and other details are clearly moulded, but lack any colouring and look very dull. I mean, this is basic detailing that's a shame to see hasn't been done. Aside from that, she has decent detail all over and is generally rather nice looking. Overall, these engines are a mixed bag. I'm confident that they would have been all better made back in 2013 as taken plays. For what they are and how much they cost, they aren't bad. They are cheap toys after all. I suspect these engines should satisfy most children regardless of their many flaws. But that's all for this video. Sam the Train Fan, out. Wait a minute. Where was Lexi? Oh, there she is.